helping organizations and individuals. Brad has dedicated his career to helping organizations engage employees and customers, build resilient and work relationships, as well as creating collaborative and agile cultures. As the founder and CEO of Performance Point, Brad works with organizations and leadership in various industries, including names such as FedEx, Hilton Worldwide, Mayo Clinic, Nike, United Airlines, Blue Cross Blue Shield, to just name a few. Prior to Performance Point, Brad was the EVP of Novation Group, and he's also a frequently requested and featured speaker at conferences, business meetings worldwide. He's also quite an author with quite a few works to his literary expertise. Brad earned his bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Maryland and an MA degree in human resource development from Vanderbilt University. He is also the SHRM Memphis president, sits on the Tennessee SHRM State Council, faculty for Bartlett School of Banking, an advisor for Q Hub, and has served in several charitable boards. Many, many hats. Well, we're lucky to have you here today, and thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there a clicker? I probably should use this. Okay. There we go. No work. All right. So strategic plans. What we're supposed to talk about is successful operations. Correct? I'm in the right place?
Yeah.
All right. Good. So I want to start with this question. Is strategic planning complex change? What do you think? Not rhetorical. Would you argue, or you'll dip on me, appreciate it. I'll go in. Thanks, appreciate it. Would you argue that strategic planning is complex change or not complex change? Could be. I would argue that it is. So let's click to the next slide. If we look at organizational change or complex change, we look at strategic planning, there are some factors that belong to both, right? So the first one is, when we're strategically planning, we have to analyze organizational capabilities and external challenges. We also have to do that when we're dealing with complex change. When we are doing strategic planning, we also have to examine different approaches and choices. We have to do the same thing when we're engaging in complex change. We have to develop a clear vision, mission, and strategies when we're doing strategic planning. And we have to do the same thing when we're involved in complex change. And the list continues to go through. Both of them require the same skill set. If you're not going to treat strategic planning as complex change, then your plan will sit on a bookshelf and never be used. Okay? So strategic planning itself has to be complex change. Otherwise, it never amounts to anything. So I want to talk to you about something. We'll click to this next slide. And it's a slide I love. It's called Managing Complex Change. And you can think about this as saying managing strategic planning. Same thing. Change the title. But it basically says there are 5 core components. All right? And those 5 core components are vision. Do we have a good vision? Do we have the skill set to pull this off? Do we have the incentives so that people want to do it? Do we have the resources available for people to pull this off? And do we have a strong action plan? Are we clear about how we're going to do this? Now, the reason why those 5 are important is because if you look down the right-hand column, right, they equal change. But if you look down the right-hand column, you're going to see problems that you have with strategic planning. You going to go to the virtual lobby? All right. All right. He's still going to the virtual lobby, huh? All right. There's always one. What's your name? What was it? Chris? No, it's a pleasure, Chris. I appreciate it. Actually, makes it more fun for me. So, all right. So, if you look at those 5 things have to be perfect for your change effort or your strategic planning effort to potentially be successful. If one of those things is not right, I will guarantee you your strategic planning will fail miserably. So So how do I know when I'm having a problem with one? Well, you'll notice that...
GPS signal lost.
What is this with this group? All right.
There's your troublemaker.
In a moment, I want everybody to yell out Siri and see how many phones actually. All right, so if you notice, by each one of those, there is a darkened box. All right, so when it comes to vision, you can see the box that's darkened connects to what? The one in vision connects to what? Confusion, right? So if you have people who are confused, it means that you don't have a good vision. All right? Now, here's the problem with that. Every time I walk into an organization and I have this conversation with an executive or a CEO, and I say, your people are confused, your vision isn't good enough, what do you think they tell me? What?
They have a vision.
Yeah, I have a vision. It's a good vision. I understand the vision. These people are just slow. They're confused because they just don't have it together. And that's the exact wrong mentality. If your people are confused, you don't have a good vision, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter whether you understand it. It matters whether the majority of people understand it. Here's the definition of a great vision. A great vision transports the people from where they are to where you need them to be. That's the definition of a great vision. A great vision transports people from where they are to where you need them to be. If your vision does not do that, it is not a good vision. The best example I can give you of an incredible vision, and I'm not talking about complex, because most great visions are actually simple, was Bill Gates. Before there was a real computer industry, I mean, there was, but if you wanted a computer back in the day when Bill Gates did this, it was going to be the size of this wall. And I'm talking about probably 0.01% of organizations, businesses had that because it was expensive and outrageous and unaffordable. People hadn't seen computers before to a large extent. He got up in a press conference and he said, I see a day when there will be a personal computer on every person's desktop. And within weeks, you had businesses opening up right around Microsoft because they wanted to be a part of that revolution. Because he transported people from where they were to where he needed them to be. That's the sign of a great vision. Okay? That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we do is if we have anxiety, what does it mean we're having problems with? Skills. We have anxiety, it means we're having problems with skills. You know, the biggest problem we have today in organizations is the just do it mentality. Figure it out. Learn. The truth of the matter is every piece of research we see says that people are going to have to work longer, 50 to 60 years, and they're going to have to recreate themselves every 2 to 5 because skills are going to go out the door. That's a marathon. And people are getting stressed and they're getting tired, and what they want is they want support from their organizations. But what you're seeing is you're seeing more organizations rely heavily on telling their employees to just do it, figure it out. All right? And if you don't have the skill set, I'll find somebody who will. Which is funny, because do you know how many jobs we have that can't be filled because we don't have people for them in the economy right now? We have 10 million jobs more than people. By the way, by 2040, they expect that to be 20 million jobs open that can't be filled because we don't have the people. And that was before we were turning off H-1B visa immigration and before we started with this heavy deportation perspective. So that number will probably go up. We can't afford to lose our people, and we can't afford to freak them out. We need to help them reskill and upskill. And as organizations, if we're not doing that, we create problems. My favorite example, and it's not your industry, but my favorite example, because I think it tells a story, is I knew a person who was hired in, and the company decided they were going to get very aggressive in sales. So previously, these people were more like customer service reps, right? And they wanted them to sell. And the manager came over to the person and said, I need you to make 100 calls today. Here are the people. Your job is to make the calls, prospect them, and sell them. Person had never prospected before. Their only experience with prospecting was to get annoying phone calls during dinner at home, right? How do you think they felt about prospecting? Didn't like it. Didn't want to do it. And what about their skill set? Didn't have it. They tried one or two, did a terrible job, gave up and quit that same day. Just Do It is a wonderful marketing strategy. It's an incredible transactional strategy. It gets you to buy a pair of shoes. But Just Do It will not get you to be able to run a marathon. All right? You need to develop the skill set with your people. And that needs to be part of the strategic planning effort. The next one's incentives. Oh, if you get resistance, it's because people don't have the incentives, or they actually have incentives that work against you. Okay? I worked with a company once, and it was funny. Because they wanted us to do an analysis of their client base and tell us who their target market was. And when we did it, we did give them their target market, but we found out something else that was really interesting. It proved Pareto principle was right. 80% of their revenue was coming from 20% of their clients. So you know what they decided they wanted to do? They wanted to get rid of 80% of their clients that accounted to 20% of the revenue, because they were having trouble servicing them. Their customer loyalty was low. Their ratings were low. Their salespeople were on a treadmill. Their service people were on a treadmill. So if they got rid of 80% of their clients that only amounted to 20% of the revenue, they would be in really good shape to add on a couple more clients and be more profitable and have a reasonable kind of work life. And they could actually service their clients better. Right? So they told the salespeople about it, and they loved it. They loved it. Absolutely loved it. A year later, we came back, and nothing had changed. Anybody want to take a guess as to why? Well, you medical people are shy. Nobody wants to guess. Well, there was definitely no incentive to change. In fact, there was incentive not to change. We had given them a plan that included changing the compensation program. Their compensation program they had with their salespeople was a 1-for-1 commission. So if I were a salesperson there and I cut 80% of my clients, which is 20% of the revenue, that meant I took a 20% pay cut. And even we told them, when we gave them the plan, that won't work. Here's a bridge to make sure they're okay and they're even, right? Until you make the transition. They decided, the salespeople liked it so much they would do it without that bridge. And they did not do it without the bridge. You will never accomplish anything if you don't have the right incentives in place. And it's not just about having the right incentives in place, it's about removing the disincentives from in place as well. You know, we're in the medical world here, right? You're all from the medical background, so here we're going to talk about something here. Smoking. We all know the incentives to quit smoking, right? What are the incentives for quitting smoking? Health, that's one. What else? Money, that's another one. Good, all right. What are the disincentives to stop smoking? Okay, the withdrawal's one. Okay, good. What's
Weight
another
gain.
one? What was that?
Weight gain.
Weight gain is another one. Good, good. Stress relief. People use it as stress relief, right? What else?
Social.
Oh, it's a big one. Social, right? So we wonder why people don't quit smoking when you create programs that focus on the reasons why you should. Well, we're not dealing with the reasons that stop them from focusing on why they should. There are disincentives to quitting that we have to deal with. And so incentives is it's a two-sided coin. And we have to deal with both. All right? Then you got frustration. Oh, frustration. What's causing frustration? What was that? Lack of resources. I'm going to tell you a true story. It's a real story about me that happened earlier in my career. I took a job with Humana Inc. We all know who Humana Inc. is, right? Because healthcare company, insurance company. I showed up for my first day of work, and I was talking to my new boss. Her name was Harriet. I'll pretend you're Harriet. Hi, Harriet. How you doing? We had this great conversation, and you know what Harriet told me? She said, why don't you go to your office and settle in? I said, great, I'll do that. I'll settle in. So I went to my office, and I walked in my office, and there was absolutely nothing there. There was no desk. There was no file cabinet. There was not even a waste paper basket. When I say bare, the only thing that was in there were painted walls and carpet. So I went back to my boss. I went to Harriet. I said, Harriet, help me understand what's going on here, right? Because you said settle in, and I really can't settle in because there's nothing in my office. And she said to me, oh yeah, I forgot. I said, you forgot what? She said, I hired you, and I put your paperwork through, and it got approved. And the day after you got approved, we went into a budget freeze, and they won't let me purchase anything for you. That's exactly where my headset was. I was like, okay, all right, fine. All right, well, what can I do? And she said, why don't you go talk to Bob, who's the VP of HR. So I went to Bob, and I said, Bob, I can't start my job because there's nothing in my office. How do I get like a desk, a chair, just some basic things? And he said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's above my pay grade. I can't break the freeze. So then I said, what am I supposed to do, Bob? And he said, here's what I think you should do. Go back to your team and see if there's anybody in there that will let you buddy up with them. You know, maybe when they're not in their chair, you can sit down, you can log into their computer, and then look at a little section of their file cabinet. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? I mean, this is crazy. So I'm close to quitting. But in my house, there was a rule that we had, which is you never make a decision when you're tired and emotional. So I said, I'm not going to do that. And so I decided I would spend the rest of the day, because by this time I'm hitting the afternoon, I had lunch, hitting the afternoon, I'm going to try and see if there's a solution. Someone recommended that I go talk to the facilities manager. So I went to go see the facilities manager. And he said, oh, I'll take you to our storage facility. There's a lot there. I said, great. And it was literally 1 block by 1 block by 1 block by 1 block. I mean, it was a huge facility, multiple stories. I was excited. I'm going to find some stuff there. We're going to be in good shape. So I go in, and there are these desks, and they're in perfect condition, and I loved them. So I said, I'll take that one. And he looked at me, and he said, you can't have that one. And I said, it's in perfect condition. He said, I know, but you're not going to get it. I said, why can't I have that one? He said, it is metal. I said, so what? He said, you're management. Management gets wood. Everyone else gets metal. I said, I don't care. He said, it's against the policy. You can't have it. I said, take me to the wood. He said, I will, but you won't like it. So we went over to the wood. And it was like a Humpty Dumpty story, right? I mean, you couldn't put it back together again. It was awful. At this point in time, I realized fate is sealed. I've got a decision to make. It's about 5 o'clock in the evening. I just need to get a snack and a beer. It's been a long day. So I asked the facilities guy, do you know where I can get a couple appetizers and a beer? Tied me over. I'm going to go home. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to sleep on it. Tomorrow I'm going to make a decision about whether or not I'm quitting. Because I can't work here if I don't have any resources. So, he tells me, I said, look, you've been a big help. I know you couldn't actually help me, but you tried. If you want a beer, come on, I'll buy, it's on me, I'll buy it. So we're sitting down there at a table, at a restaurant, having a beer and an appetizer. And he looks at me, and he said, you know, there's only 2 people in this company that can break that freeze. I said, really, who are they? He said, the first one is David Jones, the president of the company. And you will never, ever get in to see him. Which was true, I was not going to get to see him. I said, who's the second person? And he looked at me, straight-faced, and then all of a sudden, he started to smile. And I said, are you kidding me? It was you? You put me through all this. Why did you put me through this when you could have helped me? And he said, because you management folks come here and look down your nose at people like me, because I'm in facilities, and I needed to see what you were made of. You treated me like your equal. You treated me like your teammate. So I'm going to take care of you. So I went home. I said, I'm going to sleep. And tomorrow, when I wake up and I go in and I see what's there, what's going on, I will either quit or I will stay. And I walked into that office. There was a file cabinet, a desk, a chair, a credenza, a waste paper basket. There was even a printer and a computer already set up for me. He had done it overnight. And that is the only reason I stayed at Humana and my career at Humana continued, because I was given the resources. How many times have you done strategic planning and expected people to do things when we haven't given them the resources? I have walked into organizations of every industry, and I have seen teams look at the work that they have to do and do an analysis, and they have 2 people, and 5 people working overtime would be needed to actually get that done. You cannot win if you don't give people the resources. You will lose every time. Okay? And the last one is false starts, and false starts come into play with action plans. Who here has lived in a ready, fire, aim environment? Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is people follow you because they believe in you and what you're trying to accomplish. So if you have a false start, you lose their belief in you and what you're trying to accomplish. If you have 2 false starts, you're never getting it back. People will not give you that kind of leeway. They will only follow you if they believe that we're going in the right direction in the right way. That doesn't mean that they don't believe that you're going to have to make some tweaks and changes, but they need to know that this is really something worth charging ahead for. You don't get multiple chances for that. Rather than pushing forward with a change quickly, what I would tell you is make sure you're doing it thoughtfully. Okay? Hey, I want you to think about this. Has anybody in here been in charge of rethinking something and coming up with a big change in the organization? If you have, raise your hand. Okay, good. So, how long did you sit with that and think about it?
I wrote 2 business plans that took me about 2 years.
2 business plans that took you about 2 years. And when it was introduced to your people, how long did we give them?
About 30 minutes in that meeting.
2 years of thinking through something and processing it. And we expect our employees to flip like that. When do they get a chance to actually process it, come to terms with it, believe in your plan, work through it with you? If we want our people to be on board, it needs to be done thoughtfully and with them, not to them. Okay? So, I want you to do something right now, and that is, I want you to think back over 3 to 5 past changes that you have been through. And I want you to think about which one of those things do you struggle with as an organization, and which one of those things do you think is a strength of your organization? And write that down for yourself. So do you struggle with vision or skills? Are you good at resources and action plan? Where do you struggle and where do you succeed? Who's got a strength that they're willing to share? Come on. Who's got a strength? Nobody has a strength in this room? How's this? If you're not willing to share, raise your hand. Who's got a strength that they identified? I just want to know who's got strength that they have identified. Raise your hand high. I want to see them. Okay, so we're seeing a bunch of hands go up. Who's got an area of weakness that they've identified? Okay, a lot of hands are going up. Good. The reason I want you to do that is because it just goes to show you how easy it is to look at this and evaluate. So when you engage in strategic planning or any kind of complex change, I want you to keep a slide like this out. And if you want, I can email it to you all and you can share it with the group. But I want you to keep this slide handy with you because as you're going through, you're going to easily be able to say, gosh, my people are confused. I need to work on my vision. Oh my goodness. This is the second time we've started this. Why are we having false starts, right? And if we don't nip this in the bud, we're going to lose our people. If you use this and keep it front and center, you can use this as a vehicle to evaluate very quickly what's going on and get yourself back on track when it comes to your strategic planning efforts. And it's going to keep you safe and moving forward, all right? It's simple, it's practical, but it's profound in its use, right? So I want you to keep it handy and use it. Now, there is one thing that's missing from this group. Anybody want to take a guess what's missing from this group? The confusion, the anxiety, resistance, frustration, and false starts. Those are 5 of the core things that you have to deal with when you're dealing with managing change. But there's one big thing that is not up there that we need to talk about because it's the biggest problem with change ever. Yes.
Trust.
What?
Trust.
Trust is a form of it, so yes. Well, it leads to failure if you don't have it. So, what was that? Buy-in, okay, buy-in, trust. Here's what I would suggest. They're all good words that reflect people's readiness to change. How ready are they to change, right? So, I did the what's missing, so. All right, so let's talk about readiness to change. There are a couple of things I want you to be aware of when it comes to readiness or change. One we talked about a moment ago. What's your name again?
Rachel.
Rachel took 2 years, and then we give employees 30 minutes. I'm going to ask you to socialize change significantly before you're ready to pull the trigger. If you're asking people to take on a strategic planning effort, and that means we have to shift the way we're working, then I want you to give them time to get comfortable with the change, right? The more complex, the more time needed. Most changes you can do probably 3 to 4 weeks. But it allows people to get comfortable with something and for you to have conversations with the people on your team to understand where they are. And some of your team is going to be at a place where they're going to go, I don't want to do this. And some of your team are going to be on board. Your job, your second job, is to not react defensively to the people who say, I don't want to do this. Why would I say don't react defensively?
Not personal.
Okay, it is for them, but it shouldn't be for you, right? It's not personal for you, but it should be for them. That's why they're saying no way, because it's personal. I'm uncomfortable with this. But the moment we go react and we say, do you want a job? Get on the bus. You'd better just do it. Is the moment we acknowledge that we took that personally. So you have to ask yourself, why are you taking that personally? Why would you do that? And you need to stop yourself from doing it. Because when somebody comes to me and says, I don't want to do it, you know what I'll say to them? Bingo. Tell me why. What's your concern? Let's talk through that. Okay? So, allow time. Don't get defensive. I'm going to give you another third thing I think is really important. I can't go over change in 35 minutes, but I'm going to give you a couple of tips. Third one is, you know when you want to pull the trigger? When you have a few early adopters. Don't pull the trigger until you have people who are already there. The reason I say that to you is because if I don't want to do something and 2 or 3 people are already doing it on my team, it's hard for me to stay in no way. I have pressure now to move. Okay? The second reason is people follow leaders. And you're not the leader. The people who are leading the way are the leaders. Right? Just because it was your plan doesn't make you the leader. The people who are adopting your plan, those early adopters, they're the leaders that your people need to look to. Because they're your peers. And if my peer's doing it, then I can do it. Right? I always love to go back to Roger Bannister. Who remembers who Roger Bannister is? He was the first person to run, you should know this, Natasha, first person to run a 4-minute mile. Prior to that, no one had run a 4-minute mile ever. In fact, what was amazing was, if you looked at the medical field, it had basically said it was an impossibility for a human being to run a 4-minute mile or less. We physically, supposedly, did not have the capability to do it. That was our medical belief. Until Roger Bannister ran it. And what's amazing was that within the next couple of years, a bunch of other people beat the 4-minute mark. It wasn't physically impossible. We just needed one person to lead the way and show that it was. Early adopters make the difference, right? And that's what we have to focus on. So what I want you to think about this when it comes to strategic planning is less is more. Allow people to process. Right? Socialize it and work through concerns and find your Roger Bannisters. If you can do all that, your strategic planning will be much more successful and it won't sit on a shelf. With that, I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to open up to any questions you have. Well, that was easy.
I mean, who would you recommend as we start to think about, like, who do you recommend being in the team as you're starting to put this together? What levels of people and what
I would encourage.
skills and...
Okay, good. No, I would encourage you to think about this as in different rooms. So don't think about it as the room. Think about the different rooms that people need to be in. And here's how I'd break that up. I would say there's a room that houses the people who are accountable for this, or the person who's accountable for this, and the people responsible for making it happen. Right? That's one room. There's a room for people that are impacted by this that need to be consulted on it because it has a direct impact on the way they work and they do business, and we should not be doing things to them, we should be doing things with them. They may not be responsible for getting it done, but we are responsible for in getting their voice, right? So that's another room. Who needs to be consulted? And the other room is who needs to be informed, right? And it's amazing to me how often we forget about that. We think about getting the work done, and we forget about the other pieces. And then we wonder why we have backlash and frustration. And it's because we think about it as in, who's accountable, get this done, right? And I actually have seen, for instance, in a lot of companies, I love this, they'll revamp benefits, right? And then they'll open up benefits and they'll tell people about it right before re-enrollment, but everything is completely different. And everyone in the company is freaking out because it is so amazingly different. And they were like, well, we told people about it. Yeah, you told them in like a 5-minute speech or email right before you opened up re-enrollment. What happened to telling them, here are some of the changes that you're going to start to see? It may look confusing, but here's how you can work through it. It'll be easier. Here are the people that are going to be here to help you through it. Utilize them. All those things that you could have done weeks prior to opening up re-enrollment, and you didn't do it. And now you're wondering why you have problems, because we didn't think about the room of who needed to be informed, right? Or we have somebody dealing with things like that, or other parts of the company, and they are executives. But we are now hiring lots of Gen Z folks. And we put out, I'll use benefits to continue because it's just an easy example. We put out benefits that people in their 50s love. But people in their 20s don't see any value in. And then we're frustrated that our employees don't value these expensive benefits that we're giving them. Because why? We didn't consult with all the people that need to be consulted with. So I want you to think about not who needs to be in the room. It's who needs to be in each of those rooms. And we'd better be very clear about that and utilize them proactively rather than reactively. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. What other questions you have?
I have one.
Sure.
So I noticed that like a feedback loop wasn't in the presentation. It is important to see, okay, what did we do well, what did we not do well? What is your recommendation on timeframes for that feedback loop?
Okay. All right. So I think, so she asked about a feedback loop and recommendations for timelines for the feedback loop, and I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. Yeah, there's, in 30, 35, it's hard to cover everything. But in terms of feedback, here's what I would suggest. You should actually create multiple feedback loops. What we tend to do is we think about feedback after we've enacted something. We should be getting feedback at every phase of the process. Ideation, breaking it down and analyzing it, planning it out, not just the implementation. If we wait to get feedback during implementation, we have waited too late. Okay? The second piece I would tell you is that I think feedback loops need to be determined based on the complexity of the change, right? So, anybody here ever use something called the J-curve? Okay, so this is a really cool thing, and I can see if I can send you a slide on this too as well, just to remind me. But there's a J-curve in any kind of change effort. It's really interesting. It basically says, here is your current state, okay? When you do something new, you're trying to get to a better state. But between the current state and the better state, something happens. You have to unlearn, stop doing what you're doing, unlearn what you were doing, learn something new, right? Figure it out, and then get efficient at it, and that takes a while before you can get really good and get the new results that you're looking for. You've got to discern between complaints and feedback. So what do I mean by that? If you're a manager and you're putting people through a change, the non-early adopters are going to see that they're not getting the results that they wanted at the very beginning, and they're going to come to you and say, see, I told you this is going to work, and here's why, and they're going to get you to stop before they unlearned and learned all the new things, right? So you need to learn to have a little bit of a backbone to see it through so that you're getting good feedback and not just complaints. Second problem you have is, who here reports to an executive team in this room? Raise your hand. Okay, so a lot of people do. Good. So here's the second problem, and I would tell you to use the J-curve this way. When I said it to you, pull this J-curve out and go over it with senior leaders that you are responsible for, right? And you go to tell them straight up, here's the process. So it's probably going to be, we've predicted it's going to be 6 weeks before we start seeing the results we want, and we're probably going to see a downward set of results before we see the positive results. Are you comfortable with waiting that out? Are you ready for that? Because when you don't have that conversation and you start a change and it doesn't go the way people want it to go, you get called in by the CEO and they say, what the hell were you thinking? I want this hospital to function better, not worse. Why are you doing this, right? Go back and do it the old way. But if you have that conversation first, then you can go back to your CEO and say, I know you're frustrated. Remember, we talked, it was going to be 6 weeks, and we said we were going to see a drop in the performance. What's changed between the last conversation we had and now? Are you still on board or are you not on board? But it puts you in a seat where you can have a conversation with your CEO and hold that emotional outburst in tow because they're stressed out, right? And you look like a business person for doing it. And that's powerful. So I would say there's multiple feedback loops, and then you also have to be prepared for that J curve so that you can distinguish between feedback, fear, and complaints, because they don't want to do it. I think that's the key. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good, fantastic. All right. And sorry I yelled like a CEO. I hope it didn't bring back too many memories. So, all right. So, any other questions you have? All right. Well, I would encourage you to, if you have questions, to reach out to me. You can email me, get me on LinkedIn. You can call. I'm happy to answer any questions you want. This is one teeny weeny small piece. I would argue one more thing before I go, and that is this. Ultimately, strategic planning and change is, we think about it in terms of process, tools, and systems. And yes, all those things happen. And you're probably pretty good at that kind of stuff. But it falls apart largely because people don't adopt it. Any organizational change is a sum of individual changes, right? And so what I would tell you is this. You need to be prepared to coach your people through change and help them work through their fears, their concerns, their discomfort, their lack of confidence, and see it as an opportunity rather than a barrier. Because ultimately, that's where your success rests. It's not going to be in a book. It's not going to be in a process. It's not going to be in a system. And to prove it to you, how many people here have had CRMs, customer relationship management software, or patient relationship management softwares? Anybody here have that kind of stuff? How many of you are still fighting garbage in, garbage out? I know companies that have changed their software systems 4 or 5 times with the same problem, and there's one reason and one reason only: because people don't use them well. It isn't the system, it's your people. And they're not the problem, they're the opportunity. So meet them where they are and coach them up, all right?